So you've fallen in love with monoprinting on a gel plate, but now you want to create those amazing multi-layer looks. Not sure where to start? I have two approaches that will have you creating with confidence in no time. Every technique video is narrated live while I'm doing the technique, so you're getting a real-time view of how the whole process works. Pull out the supplies I'm using and create right along with me, pausing as you need. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. So in this video, I'm going to focus on two ways that you can get multi-layer looks with your mono printing. I don't want you to necessarily focus on the tools or the mediums that I'm using. I want you to focus more on the process because that's the most important. It's not necessarily about what I'm using or the stencils or anything like that. It's about how I'm doing the process. So let's take a look at the first one, which is really just creating a print that's got multiple layers on it. So as usual, I've got a piece of paper that I'm going to have over on the side here to grab my residuals. And then I've got some paper for from a phone book. I've got my regular paper that I like to use for my prints here. I've got some stencils, I've got some paints, I've got some sprays, I've got all sorts of different things. Like I said, that's not the big deal here. What is the big deal is knowing exactly how things are going to layer and what your final look is going to be. So in this first process, this is going to go a little faster because you're going to be just creating one layer at a time. So it's important to know that the first layer you put down is going to be the last layer seen on your project. So let's say I'm going to start with this phthalo blue, and I'm just going to put some on my gel plate here and roll it out. So you can use any kind of brayer, whatever you're comfortable with. Let me get this first layer on here. I don't want it to really dry because I want to pick it up right away. So I'm going to then take my brayer and just brayer off my color here. And then I'm going to grab a piece of paper over here and I'm going to grab my first layer. So remember, this is going to be the last layer in your project. So as I pick this up, you can see I've got this beautiful blue printed background. So now, as I'm working on my gel plate, this is going to dry and I'm just going to keep layering on the gel plate. So let's say I want to do like a bigger look. So I've got this really cool stencil here. I'm going to add in another color. This is going to start drying. So the colors are just going to layer on top of each other and it's not going to matter what color comes next because it's just going to layer on top of each other. So again, I'll take my brayer and brayer that over my stencil here. That's kind of a light layer, so let's add some more color to it. All right, so pull this off. I like to flip this over as well and put it on my paper here, and then just with both, get like a really nice residual print on that. So you've got a little bit of a flower there. I've got my rose here. Now I can, this is dry for all intents and purposes, and I can take my next layer. So the colors are going to interact, but you're going to get that really nice look. And then I still have some residual on here. If I want to start gathering a ghost print, I can do that. Like say I want to take some newsprint and gather that ghost print, I can start doing that as well. So this is fairly clean and I'm just going to keep working at this. So let's say this time I want to take another stencil and I'm going to just do some ink spray. Let's do some of this Villainous Potion. So this is purple. And I am actually going to take my brayer and kind of brayer it in there. It's going to bubble up because it's just on this gel plate, right? So I've got a little bit on my stencil, which is going to be awesome on my piece over here. That's going to look really cool. I can even put some on this here. I can do all sorts of things with that. Just let that kind of sit and soak in while I go ahead and grab this. And again, now I can start doing things like going in various places and grabbing that medium as I go. The spray is going to look a little different because it's a spray. It's not going to come across as much as you might think. So if you're concerned about the darkness we have going on here, let's go ahead and add in some white. And I'm going to clean off my brayer here. And just get that on there. Maybe not perfectly. See, it's picking up some of that purple, which is great. Again, I'm going to wipe off my brayer. Then I can start picking up pieces of that. All right, we're going to leave that in place. And then maybe I'll do some stress. And grab one of these little fun things and add in some texture. And again, start picking it up. So this, as you can see, is just starting to layer on top of itself. It always goes through an ugly phase. Don't be concerned about that. Yeah, that rose in the background isn't as apparent as it once was. But guess what? We can come back and put it on here again if we want to. So if I did like the way that that red looked, let's see if I can pull in a little bit more of that now. And this would be perhaps my finished layer. So I'm going to finish this up. With that rose. Again, I've got some really great residual on there. It can go on my newsprint. And then I can pick up another rose here if I want. There we go. And get something really, really neat. All right, so in this case, the print is getting pulled up as you go. So you're layering layers on top of each other. And this is a fairly easy way to get prints. As you can see, sometimes they get a little muddy because I'm still working on the same print here. So this is just something to experiment with if you want to attempt doing a multi-layer print this way. And this is definitely one way to go about doing it. And you can have a gorgeous look really in no time. And it's actually saving because you're only working with one piece of paper. You might work with 2 or 3 just to give it a little bit more time to dry. But this is how it works. You're working from the bottom up, and whatever you put on last is what you're going to see. So in our next segment, we're going to look at how you can build everything up on the gel plate and pull one print at a time. All right, so for the second method, we're going to build basically everything on the gel plate itself to pull our final print. Now, the way that this works is that the first thing you put on your gel plate is what's going to show on the top. So in our previous method, the last thing you put on was what showed up on top, right? So this was the print that we ended up with. In this case, the dahlia that I have left over on here is going to be the most prominent for the most part. So you want to think about building things, smaller layers and little bits first, and then adding on a bigger layer for your background. So let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to leave this dahlia right on here, and I want it to dry. The drier this is, the better, because when you start putting another layer of paint on here, it's going to want to mingle together. If this is dry, that resists it, and you want to take your time. So this method takes a little bit more time and patience, but can totally be worth it because you're going to end up with a really cool look. All right, so I've got another stencil here. And let's say I want to put just, a little bit over here and a little bit over there. We're going to use the same blue. And I'm going to grab my brayer. All right, so maybe some there, maybe some here. Maybe I even want to flip it over. and get some real good texture going on here. Now I need to wait for this to dry. So while I'm waiting for it to dry, of course, I'm going to go ahead and brayer off any extra material off to the side here. If I want to pull a little bit of a print, I can do that. So let's grab a piece of newsprint here, and I'm going to grab in just a few little places. That way we're not getting the full effect. We're getting a little bit of a fade out. You see how I just grabbed some of that. Grab some of it. It's not really going to do a great job of grabbing the white because the white is really dry right now. So we need to wait for this to dry just a little bit more. And you can force that dry by actually pulling up a little bit of the print. That'll just pull up the wet parts and leave most of what's dry behind. And then you can work on your next layer. All right, so this is pretty dry right now. And so for my next layer, I'm going to destroy this a little bit. I'm going to use some Distress Oxide spray on here. And I just need to get this shook up. So that's ready to go. This is a crackling campfire. Just going to put some sprays on here. Now this is going to help lift some of that up. I'm going to use some of these fun little tools to make some texture in here. And again, just kind of wipe them off on the side. All right, so this needs to sit and dry. This is going to take a lot longer to dry because this is very liquidy. That's why using something like this acrylic paint or a heavy body acrylic works really well, because it tends to dry a little bit faster. It stays in place. It doesn't blend as much. So this is going to kind of turn into a funky greenish orange in places. And again, if I want to grab up some of that excess, I can just quickly dab and grab some of those, smush them up a little bit, and get a little bit of a different look here. But again, now I need to wait for this all to dry, especially these spots in here. They need to dry. Otherwise, when I put another layer of paint over it, it's going to blend in with it, and that's not what I want. I want to keep this nice detail and these little spots of orange that I have going on. All right, so now that this is dry, I can attempt to take a print from this. So I'm going to put a really beautiful yellow on the back of this. And I could clean this, or I could use a different brayer. Either way it will work. But I want to get a nice layer on here. A nice thin layer. There we go. I wasn't sure if it was going to be thin enough, but it is. All right, so basically what this is doing is it's grabbing all of the paint that's on your gel plate, and I'm going to go ahead and pick this up. So remember, we're building this from the bottom up. So this yellow is going to be your background color. And here you really want to rub. You want to make sure that you get all of those layers adhered to each other and adhered to your piece of paper. And once you want to give it a try, lift up a corner and see what you got. And as you can see, I'm starting to get everything. See, it's pulling up all of that goodie. This is going to be amazing. And so there you go. Look at that. It picked up everything. So the key to this method is to wait. Do nice thin layers. Allow them to dry in between. When you put on that final layer, rub, rub, rub to get all of that paint off of there. And you'll create a beautiful multi-layered look. So there you go. 2 ways to create amazing multi-layer gel plate prints. And I guarantee now that you know these 2 techniques, you're going to be creating gel prints all the time. I hope you enjoyed this technique and you add it into your toolbox sometime soon. When you give it a try, share it out on Instagram and tag me at Nicole Creates. I always love to see what your creative mind is thinking. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. And until next time, happy crafting.